What's going on, guys? Welcome in. Belleairballer here, Need Boost Podcast. We got a lot to get to today. We want to talk a little bit about Open 2 from Europe. We definitely are going to touch on what is going down in South America as FURIA continue to roll. And we are also going to touch on Space Station Gaming, who have missed Open 2 for North America after making the grand finals in Open 1. But on our road to Birmingham here, let's go ahead and start in Europe. And I feel like the only place to start is with KC, with Karmine Corp. They're the top dogs. They're head and shoulders above all the rest at this point in time. And they've made it look really easy against some of the top teams that we have in the world. They go 4-0 against Ninjas in Pajamas in the semis. They outscore them 9-0 through the first two games, and it wasn't necessarily that Ninjas looked bad from what I could see. Of course, you don't look good getting scored on 9-0 in the first two games, but Karmine Corp just hit this level where they're fast, they're cohesive, they're hungry. They remind me of where we saw Team Falcons at certain points last season, especially on lands where they would get into these matchups that were seemingly close on paper and they would just run teams over. Karmine Corp are definitely going through a honeymoon period right now, but the question is, can that honeymoon period be sustained throughout the season? They end up winning 4-0 against Dignitas, who came in hot to that finals, by the way. In the first two games were not very close. All the pressure was Karmine Corp. Even through the first 3.5, 4 minutes of game three, it was not very close. I think it was 5-0 at one point in game three. And if you just look at the scoreline, Dignitas ended up pulling it back within one or two towards the end there. And what seemed to be working out for them was backside demos, just catching Karmine Corp out of sorts. But there's also a piece of it where it's how much can you take away from the last, minute and a half of a game that was pretty much already over. I'm sure Karmine Corp were already kind of coasting into game four there. So a little bit for Dignitas to hang their hats on, a team that looked great. And we're going to talk about them more in a second. But just to continue on with Karmine Corp here, if I could, well, Bellaire, it's your podcast. You can do whatever you want. Well, thank you, random audience member. I appreciate that vote of confidence. The question isn't about whether or not Karmine Corp can continue to look good in these events. It's all about lands. It's all about lands with this team. We know that they are a certain lock for this major. I would assume for the Raleigh major and by proxy the World Championship as well. They are just oozing talent. The question is, what are they going to look like on lands? And Drali, of course, won Worlds last season. He's on a tear. What's that, 4 straight grand finals that he's been a part of? But, Atau and Vatira have had a little bit of a checkered past. Of course, Vatira has done some winning. He won a LAN alongside Queso. He won one with Karmine Corp with Itachi and Exotic as well. So Vatira has a couple under his belt, although there have been some big moments, some big pressure moments where Vatira hasn't necessarily shown the same teeth that we have known him to have as one of the best players in the world. I think about FIFA E, an event that just happened, over the off season where they are the team. It's the best team that's ever been assembled. The three best French players, the three boats, and they end up getting run down by Team Falcons, aka Saudi Arabia, in that matchup. And maybe you don't take too much away from that, but I think about the pressure that Karmine Corp have, and the narrative is flipping here, right? Coming into the season, I was guilty of this. Vitality were the best team. I feel like they were owed that vote of confidence just based on the resume of those players and the cohesion that it seemed like they would have with Zen and Exotic being friends, Exotic and Monkey Moon having just won a world championship together, Zen being the best player in the world, Monkey Moon being arguably the greatest player of all time. So I felt like Vitality was owed that. But now it's pretty clear, at least at this part of the season, that Karmine Corp are the alphas in the region and perhaps the world as well. And I think about Atau, the last player that we've talked about, and his resume. In last World Championships, Game 7, they're up against G2, now NRG, and Atau was the one who gave up two massive goals in that Game 7 that ultimately ended to them bowing out of the tournament, being sent home, the end of that Karmine Corp roster, and the ushering in of what is now the best team. And they were both unforced errors. Atau is on his backboard, tries to drop down and get a nice save, but he accidentally backflips. There's another one where he's in the midfield and there's just been an interception, so we're now in transition, and instead of trying to elevate quickly and get up to the ball to try and challenge beast mode the other direction in the midfield, he backflips there as well, gets put into a tough position, and beast mode ends up lasering one into the top right corner, and they're down 2-0. They're trying to claw back. Atau ends up getting them a big goal as they're on their way to equalizing. But, little things like that, I worry about Atau, even going back to the days on Team Liquid where he would look like the best player, one of the best players in the world. And then you just find him in these games, these high intensity game sixes, Champions Fields matchups where I was just always, you'd kind of want some of those back if you were Atau. So this team, super dynamic. Drawley is a clear upgrade over Rise, especially at this point in both of their careers. They really have it figured out. And there was somebody who had, Perry, who had put something on Reddit kind of going through some of the statistical analysis of how Karmine Corp have been able to do this. And the data bore out what we're seeing via the eye test. They are so fast. They are stealing and grabbing so much boost, really putting these teams in a tough spot, and then just utilizing a ton of fakes, power shots, doubles, solos, passes to just weaken defenses and tear them down to the studs. Then they typically have a third who is coming in to finish if one or two can't do it ahead of them. And then defensively in transition, all three of those players are so gifted on the ball. So you really got to be on your game. And something that I took away from the Vitality series where they end up going 7, and then the Dignitas series where Dignitas, again, they came in looking super hot. They just had a big victory over Team Vitality. They had dropped everybody en route where it seemed like Dig were going to be kind of around that, maybe they could eke into a major spot. And if they just consistently get top sixes, maybe they can just find one via consistency here. Not only do they break the top 8 curse, but they end up making it all the way to the finals here. But before I move on, just to finish that point about Karmine Corp, you've really got to punch them in the mouth early if you have any chance of winning in 7. You can't go down 2 games against them and think that you're going to come back and win. I just think they have too much talent, and all 3 of those players can just have a game where they pop and really sink your ship. I think you got to come out and either hold them to no goals or just get into a shootout with them. You got to win one early. I think if you win a game 1 in their current form, that's kind of the only chance, especially within the region, in my opinion, in a 7-game series. All right, let's move on to Dignitas here. They look great. Apparently, Jack and Stizzy looked super engaged and excited to be playing. They were both motivating each other. They were animated. Jorius could have been as well, though he didn't have a face cam, so I'm not really sure. But huge wins over Ninjas in Pajamas and Vitality. 2 confidence boosters, right? Like we were saying a second ago with Karmine Corp, this Dignitas roster seemed like they were going to be trending a little bit behind them, even behind a team like Gentlemates. They were in that GK 100% realm after Open 1, but now they've bust that door wide open and they are in a great position here to try and make this land. Stizzy has been a player who has interested me, but I haven't really seen yet him showing that elite tier ability to pop. But I think that was a little short-sighted by me, looking for him to become an elite untouchable scorer or an elite passer or elite defender. He really is doing it across the board. He's able to get his teammates involved. He has that huge series ending beat pass 2 against Vitality to sink them, where he gets this beautiful pop. Monkey Moon goes flying past him after Monkey Moon turned the ball over. Had a terrible series But Monkey Moon goes flying past Stizzy, takes it up, gets a nice little, uses his momentum to get a nice little pop over the top of Exotic, who was out of boost and in a really rough spot after making a goal line save. And then he gets the air dribble bump on Zen on the goal line to seal the series. Those are the kind of goals in the big moments where you're starting to see the formation of what Stizzy could be here. And again, I feel like we do this all the time with players where even when I was doing my top 20, I put out a top 50 list not too long ago. People were saying, oh, you have Rise too high, you have Jack too high, you have Atomic too high. They're kind of past where they were. I disagree. Like Jack has still been putting in the hours, and I still think he's a great leader for this team alongside Violent Panda. Him and Jories have reconnected, and I think a lot of the RLCS is about momentum, especially in your careers. You think about a player like Hoxer, who we've talked about before, and I promise I'll bring this back, but his career kind of seemed like it was waning into the twilight, and then he totally revamps his play style and is able to come back and is still on an impactful team here for 9 lives. And Jorius is the same kind of player where after that M80 run with all the talent that they had on that roster, I mean, AJ retires for crying out loud. And then Nass says, see ya, I'm going to dip back across the pond. You kind of felt like that was done. But after that match he had with Hunter and Kaka, where they ended up looking awesome with no cohesion together, he ends up leading that Chiefs team deep into that tournament. And what he was then able to turn around and do in FIFA E, where that roster was competitive as well for the Netherlands. You just think that Jorius still has something in the tank, and there's still some things where we think about in that series against Karmine Corp where they really need a big win. He ended up sinking them, in my opinion, in that game 3, I think it was. And we're talking about Jorius, that is, where there was one where he tried to get a flick over the top of one as Digger trying to move in transition. And he tries to flick one over the top of a defender, but flicks it too high for Stizzy to get up to. It's immediately intercepted by Drawley, who puts a double touch off the ceiling right on their heads. And then there was another play a little bit later where Jorius just got a little bit loose on his own backboard, tries to fall down to get a save, just kind of flops over it and gives up an easy one. There's still moments like that where, if they're really going to be making another grand finals or making a run at a LAN, if they make it there, of course, you need Jorius to kind of, you hope that he can buff out and refine some of those mistakes from his game. But as far as him being a viable option, and the same goes for apparently Jack, who was, in my opinion, one of the 2 or 3 best players in North America 2 seasons ago, alongside Chronic and Nolly and Gen G. Jack is not that far removed from the top. As they're trying to usher in this new player in Stizzy here, it just really seems like this is a team that is together and cohesive. And I mean, Stizzy, we all saw the clip about after they beat Vitality, he hits him with the dance moves. He is gushing confidence. And it was really cool to see that he has his FIFA E poster when he was a part of the Spanish team, as kind of the only poster hanging in his wall, as kind of that reminder that he's one of the top players to represent his country and by extension one of the best players in the world. Dignitas are looking great. They're still one of those teams, and Europe is one of those regions where we could see in open 3 they just draw the short end of the stick and they end up catching the wrath of a chip on their shoulder gentlemates who are trying to prove something here, and then fall to lowers and have some tough matchup against Ninjas in Pajamas, and they could end up missing the major. But as far as talent to make a major goes, I think Dignitas are totally in play, and are looking like one of the best teams in Europe right now. All right, so we danced around Vitality a little bit here. Let's just go ahead and get to them. Vitality are fine, guys. Calm down. Um, of course, they're in a very tough spot. Monkey Moon had an awful tournament, in my opinion. I didn't catch all of the matchups that they had through groups in Swiss, but caught all of the playoff stuff. And yeah, Monkey Moon looked terrible. He was driving right past balls and not getting a touch on them, trying to get little pops to himself on the sidewall that he would fully miss. A couple where he's trying to flip into the ball and he just double jumps past. I don't know if he needs a new controller or what. And Monkey Moon is always going to be one of those players who wears his emotions on his face. When he makes a mistake and you see the face cams, Exotic is stoic and locked. Zen looks like he's about to kill somebody, and Monkey Moon will be, head back and forth and all of that. But you kind of just come to accept it. It comes with the greatness. And Monkey Moon has done this several times, right? Where he has had a pretty lackluster ramp up to some of these LAN events and especially these world championships. But I really just don't care or want to hear it. I still don't want to see this team in a LAN setting. And honestly, I think that this is probably, if we want to be glass half full, good for them. Me and a lot of other people had them as the best team in the world coming in here, and for them to get punched in the mouth 2 events in a row by Karmine Corp in multiple iterations, by this Dignitas team here who they should probably be beating. I think that that is a good reality check for team vitality, that there is still work to be done, and there's a long road to Birmingham, to Raleigh, and of course to wherever the world championship is going to be residing. Um, I think that they're definitely going to find their form here. Zen still looks like a killer. I went back and watched film and I locked in on him for all of these Dignitas games. Looks like he's still trying to find his teammates, still hitting the ball with a lot of power and energy, moving well around the pitch, and still looks really dangerous on the ball. I think that Vitality are not just playing the game normally right now. I think they're trying to force it and they're overthinking it and they're saying, okay, we have all of this talent and these 3 great players on our team. Nobody should be able to beat us. And I think they're just kind of getting into their heads. Karma and Core look a lot more relaxed. They look like they're having a lot more fun. And I think Vitality need to just like relax a little bit. And maybe after this loss, it could go one or two ways. They could really feel the pressure to now we have to beat Karmine Corp and win at least one of these to be a viable contender. Or maybe they say, look, we'll handle this once we get to the international stage and we'll kind of go from there. I still would probably have this team as second or third in the world, in my opinion, in a international setting. And I think as they continue to gel, they'll continue to find themselves. Of course, the challenge with saying they'll continue to find themselves as they gel, something that is often said by me and other talking heads in this sport and otherwise, is that every other team is getting the same opportunity to gel. But I think that this Vitality roster have 3 great pros. They have a great coach and a massive organization who is representing them. So if anybody's going to be taking this seriously, I think it's this roster. 100%. The only team in the top 16 without a head coach. Isn't that weird? Yet they are really rising above expectations. I talked about them in my latest YouTube video. I thought them and Gentlemates were the 2 teams that I was most interested to see how Open 2 was going to shake out. And to pat myself on the back here a little bit, I'm glad that I picked the 2 of them. Gentlemates are in complete free fall right now and 100% have been able to replicate their results from Open 1. I thought it might have been a flash in the pan. The statistics were looking like it was going to be pretty hard to replicate, where they were allowing a ton of shots, but just playing lights out defense. And they've been able to do it once again. Not only did they have another great result here, but I thought Rezi looked even better than he did in Open 1. He's probably one of my top players from the event. I just think about some of these, like the matchup against Geek, where it seemed like that was going to be maybe where their run was going to end. Geek were looking to use this as an opportunity to catapult themselves back into the running for a LAN here, and 100% came out and just denied that very quickly. Of course, Geek were able to get the offense going here and there. There were some tough looks from 100% down the stretch. They ended up losing their Ninjas in Pajamas series off kind of a poor miscommunication by Louis P trying to back pass to Rezi, but Rezi looked great. I was talking about that Geek series. Game 1 and 2, I mean, Rezi looked like the best player out of the 6, and it wasn't very close. I think the first goal, they opened it up with Rezi off the left sidewall, and he hops off, catches his reset, gets it past to Joyo, who's kind of flopping around, and then he just pressure passes a pass over to, it was either Acker or Louis P, caught him directly in stride and just rocketed one into the back of the net. Resi is mechanically totally up to snuff with everything you want him to do. The quick recoveries, all the wave dash, chain dash, reset catches. He can do it all. I think he might have gone for a Mac Tough at one point or another. Resi was out there styling, and the decal, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of it. We got all these people rocking the most boring decals you've ever seen, and Resi is out here with just an explosion. It looked like LaMelo Ball's Puma, all of his colorways on his new shoe, if you know what I'm talking about. Also, isn't it shocking that the only team that is coachless in the top 16 is crushing people on kickoffs? I would say that they probably are winning 70% of their kickoffs. And not only that, but they have a ton of sets as well, where they're doing double passing plays to get goals off of kickoffs, and double cheats and fakes and intentional losses to a man in transition to get it going really quick. They are just all over it. I don't know who's play calling all of these or who is doing the setup. Maybe they have a faceless coach who just isn't listed on Wikipedia who is mastering all of this together. But shout out to 100% because they are cruising. And look, um, we've seen situations like this before where a team who on paper you're not super impressed by ends up making a land. I think about Dignitas with that Evo, Andy, and who was their third? Was it Drees? Or I don't think it was Drees, but they end up making it. Even OG, who made it last time around, although that roster had a little more talent on paper than what this 100% is. But there have been situations before where teams that you're not blown away by put it together. I mean, Acro is kind of put his face on the map here. Resi is somebody who has played with some excellent rosters, although maybe they just weren't great fits young in his career as well, where he was looking to defer quite a bit. And Louis P is somebody who definitely deserves all of the attention and credit that he is getting. He, ever since the Shift Summer League, has just been on fire, especially offensively. There's some of these where he is just putting down doubles on people's heads off the backboard that if you close your eyes or take away the nameplates, you'd think it was in. So shout out to 100%. I hope they continue to roll. It'd be a great story to bring into a LAN setting. I'm all for top teams and having the most competitive LANs that we can have, but I will always defer to underdogs and storylines. Those are what drive my fandom. So if we could see 100% make it to a land stage, get some vindication for Louis P in the career that he has had, and get Resi and Acro some new faces into the mix, that would be fine by me. Speaking of old faces that may or may not be in the mix anymore, I think the last team from Europe that I want to hit real hard here is Gentlemates Alpine, who, all the finger pointing is going to Radosin here, and I just don't think that is very fair. In my YouTube video, I talked about how Seiko needed to get it going more on the offensive end, and Juicy is just totally skating here as a scapegoat. I think they have a great coach in Eversax, and it's just a situation where it's a team that needs to do a little better. You shouldn't have to be contending with the Ascends and the start points and even the 100% in the Geekas of the world. You should be above those teams. And that Ascend team is great. They have a lot of potential, but that was a really embarrassing loss. And it's going to fall on Radosin because the last clip that you see is of Radosin being out of position defensively, and he ends up giving up a fairly easy one to close out that series. But I think that is misplaced. This is a team that has some stuff to work on, and you should be crushing teams like that. They're a team that is playing a play style that is very hard to consistently win on, similar to what Complexity has done in years past, where even NRG, when they were back at the Garrett, Justin, Squishy days, where you're totally focused on trying to beat teams on counters and you're okay with low scoring affairs. Just think it's really tough to do that if you're gentlemates. There's too many teams that are too good at scoring these days, and you can just get caught out of place, especially against a young and hungry team like Ascend, who are great in transition and really made gentlemates pay. I think that that play style is very tough to pull off. I think you have to be a more elite scoring team. And like we had said in content past, they were 13th in goals out of 16 teams in Open One. That's just not good enough. And I feel like that play style kind of bled into what they're trying to do here. Juicy and Seiko have got to get it rolling, in my opinion. There's plenty of blame pie to go around for everybody, but now they are really in a rough spot. I guess one way to look at it is they now have nothing to lose as they go into Open 3 here. They're still technically in contention. They could have a great event and end up getting one of those land spots. But if they do not, of course, they're going to be one of the teams who get looked at around the deadline. But I think it's too early for that. I think we need to see what this team looks like. And, Seiko called a shot here, and Gentlemates called their shot here to get this team to be the team that it is. They, of course, were looking at rosters with Oski and Nass and things of that nature as well. Alpha 54 was in the mix. They kind of picked this intentionally, so maybe they stick it out. And I don't know if that's stubborn or not yet, but we still have some stuff to see from them moving forward. All right, quickly before we talk about Space Station, I want to hit South America. I've been watching quite a bit. It's happening after Europe, and it's still early enough for me to want to watch more Rocket League. I caught the grand finals of Open 1 and 2. Both of them were rematches of Furia versus Team Secret. The first one was really close, and the storyline there was swift. Was looking excellent, was looking like one of the fastest, most fluid and confident players in the world. Played a lot like beast mode when he's really rocking. He's on that same octane, moving fast, hitting the ball with speed, cutting rotation, playing a little bit of a funky, off balance, tough to get used to play style that catches defenses off guard. And Furia were just not having it in Open 2. They end up beating them really handily. And for Swift, it'll be really cool if he ends up making this land. And I don't know exactly how the points are. I should have done that research before, but seems pretty likely that they're going to make it unless they totally bomb out and somebody has an excellent event here to try and catch them, a Godfidence or a Sunset or Corinthians or somebody like that. But it looks like it's probably their second spot to take here. And it's just what are you going to get out of Mata in KV1? I really have never been the biggest Mata fan in the world. I just think that he plays the game at a different pace. It's kind of a slower pace. It is a slow-mo Kyle Anderson NBA comp, but in a way that works a little less effectively, in my opinion. And KV1, he got really burned a couple of times, especially in Open 1. There were definitely some times in Open 2 as well in the finals, but there were a couple that I really went back and watched Open 1. That series, I watched it live, and then I watched it again from several players' perspectives, and he just seems a little slow and a little flat-footed, and I don't know if it is just them needing to figure out comms. Also, it's probably not fair of me to try and judge this team solely on their matchups against Furia. They have dominated the other teams they have played, and they've played some great teams. South America has a lot of talent floating around. But yeah, especially against that top team, and especially with the track record that KV1 has at lands, I worry about whether or not that team is actually going to be able to make a splash once we get to Birmingham. But hey, if you're them, just making it to Birmingham is awesome. Furia look excellent. They continue to dominate that region, which is, in my opinion, the third best region in the world. So they're kind of getting lost in the sauce here, especially going after Europe. And, not a lot of attention is really on them, but Furia are still cruising in the dark here. And I've been thinking a lot about Furia recently and about the importance of this season. What if What if you end up making it to lands again, making a top 6, a top 8, and a top 4, or even throw a grand finals in there and you lose? How long can you do this trio for? Is it a situation where if they make a grand finals and then 2 top 4s, let's say that, maybe then you probably look at it and you say, okay, we're getting closer. But what if it is a uh, top 8, top 4 grand finals? Do you continue to run this back? Because we've seen the track record is even teams that are winning, if you stick together, the chances of you continuing to win at a high level, I feel like decrease season over season. I think about a team like Vitality or, um, you know, uh, Genji's not a good example, but they bring in First Killer, which seems like an upgrade, and that ends up biting them in the butt. There's definitely some historical teams that kind of match this description, where it just seems like sticking together can offer you diminishing returns. And even the Team Falcons is probably a better example, TRK, Ahmad, and O'Khaled, where there's kind of nowhere that you can go, but the results slowly get worse and worse. Even in RG, which is front of mind because we just talked about them with Justin Garrett and Squishy. You kind of stick together because of what you've been able to do before, but everybody's getting better season over season. And to bring this back to Furia, I just look at that roster and I think to myself, the conversation is way, way, way premature, but I've just been thinking about what you do with this team long term. How long do you keep this trio together? And if you make a move, what does that move even look like? I don't know who is the most expendable here in this situation. So I don't really have super firm thoughts, but I was thinking about this a lot, especially with Swift kind of turning into an excellent talent here. And, we've seen Diaz and what he's doing with complexity and, Wisty to a slightly lesser degree, but there's going to continue to be young talent that pops up across the world. Furia continue to absolutely dominate the region, possibly still the 3 best players in that region on that team, but just something that I'm doing thought exercises on here on the side. All right, I want to talk about Space Station Gaming, but first, do you mind if we talk a little bit of NBA? Is that okay with you guys? I sure hope so. The biggest trade of my lifetime has occurred. I've been an NBA fan since I was a kid. Um, I professionally I moonlight as an RLCS analyst, but professionally I work in the sports world and have for quite some time, and I follow it closely. And the NBA is my first love. It's probably it's a little bit lesser than the RLCS these days, just because of how much I love this esport. But I've never seen a trade like this, and if you actually care about this trade, you've probably already heard perspectives from everybody. So for the non-listener, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background here, hit you just with a couple high level pointers that I'm thinking, and then maybe we'll do an RLCS tie-in at the end here. So Luka Doncic is a 25-year-old who now plays for the Los Angeles Lakers. He is arguably the second to fifth best player in the NBA. And if you go any lower than that, you're just lying to yourself. Perennial all NBA level player, meaning he is a top 5 player year over year. And last season led the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals, where they eventually lost to the Boston Celtics. This trade is just unbelievable, especially when the return package was a 6 years, his elder, injury prone Anthony Davis, who, look, the Mavericks clearly like this guy a ton. He is a all defensive player of the year candidate who has won an NBA title with the LA Lakers. And it's just weird to see that any player is tradable. Furthermore, the most surprising thing is that they didn't shop Luka Doncic at all. Now, to bring this in, I might be losing anybody who's just an RLCS fan. So let's say Vitality, coming up to the trade deadline here, say, hey, we are open to the idea of trading another team for Monkey Moon. What would you do if you were Vitality's manager? Would you just call gentlemates and that's it and only have conversations with them? Or would you let everybody know so that you could get perspective on all the players on all the teams? You'd probably do the latter because that's the intelligent thing to do. But in this case, the Dallas Mavericks called the LA Lakers and they only offered, in my opinion, the third best player in the world to only the Los Angeles Lakers, not allowing all these other teams to bid. There's some of these teams who, let's take the Orlando Magic, for example, who could have hit you with a package of Paolo Banchero and Anthony Black or Jalen Suggs and a couple picks and some swaps. That's probably better than Anthony Davis, in my opinion, especially because Paolo is such a young player who could ultimately be a top 10 player in the NBA. Or let's take a team like the Houston Rockets, who have a ton of young talent from Şengün to Jalen Green to what Amen Thompson is turning into, with a lot of big contracts and veterans like Fred VanVleet, who you could try and throw into a package if you are trying to get Dylan Brooks or something in return. They have a ton of picks that they could use as well. Get a 3-teamer going and you could get in some other swaps, maybe bring in some other players. But no, the fact that they only went to one team is crazy, in my opinion. And the real wild thing here is that the Lakers have done it again. If you go back, so the LA Lakers, they get acquired by the Buss family, by Dr. Buss, way back in the day after they moved the team from Minneapolis to Los Angeles. And essentially ever since, they've had one of the best players in the world. They had drafted um, Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. They end up getting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, Anthony Davis, if you want to throw him in there. So the fact that the Lakers, who kind of felt like LeBron probably has a season or two left here, and then you're going to kind of hand the keys over to Anthony Davis and Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves. Anthony Davis is going to be 33, 34 by the time. It just kind of seemed like the Lakers were about to go into free fall here with essentially no picks. They've traded away a ton of stuff to even get the team that they have here in the first place. And look at them. Now they're going to have a 25-year-old Luka Doncic for probably the next decade. And they've done it again. So tough times, even tougher times for myself, who is a Chicago Bulls fan. We're about to gut our team. We just traded Zach LaVine for probably 60 cents on the dollar. And the talk on the word on the street is that we're probably going to move off Kobe White and Vucevic as well, and rebuild around, I guess, Matas Buzelis and Lonzo Ball here. So, all right, that's enough NBA talk. Let's talk about North America before we round out the podcast here. Space Station Gaming. They go to the grand finals against NRG and really put them against the wall. Had to claw back after SSG went up, 3-1 in that grand finals? And now they have missed Open 2 here. It reminds me of Karmine Corp from last season, right? Although that was a little different because, um, you know, Karmine Corp got cut down earlier. This time around, SSG, since they made the grand finals, get to auto qual for the group stages. And they end up losing there before even making it to the top 16. So I guess it's honestly kind of the same as Karmine Corp, who had lost to Who had they lost to? It was Fast Forward and Suh, I think. Two really good teams that Carmine had lost out to miss that. But this time around, in that it was the double elimination, remember that? But this time around, SSG lose to Lotus 8, a team that is probably going to get 0-3'd here in North America. And excuse me while I look, but who else had SSG lost to here? Let me go and check it real quick. They lose to Worstland, and I had said in that video I had done about Gentlemates Alpine and 100% there, we need to talk about Worstland because that team is exciting to me. Although they did end up dropping out 1-3 in this event, but hey, they're able to beat SSG. Oh, excuse me, I'm talking on my butt. SSG beat Worstland, although I still like that team. Then they lose to Lotus. They lose to Gen G Mobile One Racing and the Pioneers, JNAPS's team. And a couple of those are inexcusable, I think. I think it's all just signs of a young team, you know? It reminds me of a situation like the Boston Celtics a couple seasons ago where they had all the talent in the world, but when you found them late in games, they could kind of trip over themselves and they were just too young to know any better. And it ended up taking them a couple of years to build up that venom that allowed them to just destroy teams and not even give them a chance. And you look at a team like SSG, you lose to Lotus, which you shouldn't be doing, but hey, we'll call it just one of those outliers, right? Xander was really fired up from Lotus after that win I had seen online. You lose to Gen G, acceptable. Gen G, for all the flack that they catch, are certainly one of the best teams in North America. I think a top 15 team in the world, definitely top 20 in my opinion. And then you catch Pioneers. Jane Apps has definitely been in big moments before. And you know, SSG feel all the pressure, right? Then it really starts to compound. If we lose this to this team that we're definitely better than and we miss out on the main event, you really just get into your own head and it ends up going sideways. I think this will end up being a big learning opportunity for this team and they'll be back. They'll be back better, but this puts them in a really not a really rough spot, but definitely not as comfortable of a ride here to try and make it to Birmingham for the first LAN. But I haven't done the math, but I would assume that they're probably still going to make it, and I think that this is probably good for them. I think this early in the season, taking lumps is always a positive. Same for team vitality. The opportunity to learn from this before it gets really important. Um, Obviously you want to make all your lands, you want to win, you want to win in these regionals as well, but at least in my opinion, it's kind of we're here for world championships. And a brief aside on that, and I kind of need this lesson as well. There's all this talk about the world championship and stuff like that, but the whole season is so exciting. And I really just I feel really fortunate to be able to be watching the RLCS at this point in its history because I missed the first little bit. I wasn't hopping in until probably, um, you know, season X was like when I really started to like lock in and follow it. Follow it. I had known before a little bit, but it's still early days. We're just seeing the first wave of pros really like finally retire here and ushering in the second and third and fourth generations. This is going to be the first main event that Garrett G hasn't qualified for since season one, which is crazy. Um, so to be here at this point of the history is really cool because a couple seasons from now, we're going to hopefully have even more fans who are brand new to the scene, who are looking to dive in and just having that historical perspective. Um, it's always cool to get in early, and I feel fortunate to be here for this. So I didn't bring any water, before this. So voice is getting a little scratchy here. Probably as good a time as any to wrap up this podcast. Need Boost podcast. Thanks as always, guys, for spending some time with me. I'm going to be putting this one up on to YouTube for those of you who have been asking for it. So thank you for those who have been eager to hear my thoughts and perspective a little further than the YouTube videos we've been putting out. Really appreciate all y'all out there. And until next time, guys, take it easy.